Chamber of Commerce and Conservation Minnesota for hosting this forum. There is nothing more important than, first of all, having good candidates who are willing to take the time to serve and to run for public office. More important now than ever before. So let me start by thanking our candidates here for your service. So a few rules for tonight, and only a few rules. Each candidate will have time for a brief opening statement, and then we're going to go to questions. We are going to keep this conversational, so I've asked the candidates to keep their answers on point, about 2 minutes, although we'll allow for some flexibility. You know, these are complicated issues, and it's important that you, the voters, have a chance to know the candidates beyond just a sound bite. So we want to make sure that the candidates have that opportunity to answer your questions fully, but that we also are able to cover a lot of ground. So if the answers get too long or stray from the topic, I will dispense with Minnesota Nice and cut you off. And as many of you already have done, you, the audience, are invited to ask questions. There are index cards floating around. We have some over there and I think in other places. Please take the time now during the discussion to write your questions, and we will get to as many of those as time permits. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our candidates, Case and Brad Aho. Both, while they are not native of Eden Prairie, have established deep roots both in the state and in Eden Prairie. Mr. Aho is a graduate of the University of Minnesota Institute of Technology and the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Management, where he received his MBA in Information Technology. After stints at Medtronic, Audio Research, Control Data, and Magnetic Data, Mr. Aho started Information Technology Solutions and continues to work there as a Chief Technology Officer and Technology Sales Consultant after selling the company to Ericsson Technologies. Mr. Aho has been an active member of the Eden Prairie community, volunteering in several capacities for the Eden Prairie schools and with community service organizations. He was elected to the Eden Prairie City Council in 2004, and his service also includes many public commissions, particularly in transportation, where he has chaired the I-494 Corridor Commission, is vice chairman of the Southwest Transit Commission, and serves on many other organizations. He and his wife Beth have 3 children, all of whom attended the Eden Prairie schools. Welcome, Mr. Aho. Mr. Case was first elected to the Eden Prairie City Council in 1994 and currently is serving his 6th 4-year term. In addition to the City Council, he serves on the Southwest Transit Commission, the Fire Relief Association Board, and the Eden Prairie Community Foundation. Mr. Case also is a member of the Eden Prairie Historical Society and the Eden Prairie Lions Club. He has a doctorate in leadership, a master's degree in counseling and psychology, and a BA in education. He taught for 33 years in the Eden Prairie Public School System and is currently employed as a Senior Director of Specialty Solutions at United Health Group. Mr. Case has lived in Eden Prairie for nearly 40 years. He and his wife Kathy raised 4 children, all of whom also graduated from Eden Prairie High School. Mr. Case, welcome. So we're going to go to brief opening statements, and we also will have closing statements. We're going to start in alphabetical order, and then we'll flip the order at the end. So, Mr. Aho, you're up.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you to the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce and the Conservation Minnesota for holding this debate tonight, and for all of you attending and taking the time out of your schedules, busy schedules, to be here. My name is Brad Aho, and I currently serve on the Eden Prairie City Council, where I'm honored to have served for 14 years. During my tenure, our city has received numerous awards and honors, including recognition as the #1 city in the nation, and recently, surprise to me, the 2nd best lake beach town in America, which was very interesting. I've lived in Eden Prairie for nearly 30 years, and together with my wife Bev, we've raised our 3 kids here. I'm a double E from the University of Minnesota, small business owner, and work in healthcare technology, where I'm Chief Technology Officer at Ericsson Technologies. I've also been a proud member of the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce for over 20 years. I am a lifelong outdoor enthusiast, growing up camping, fishing, hunting, boating, water skiing, and snow skiing. I started going to the Boundary Waters when I was a young child in the late 60s and have been there many times, including leading many youth trips up to the Boundary Waters. The environment, air, water quality are of critical importance to me. I have worked hard to maintain and improve them in Eden Prairie. When first elected in 2004, a top priority of mine was to restore the water quality in Round Lake so that it was clean for swimming again, because it was closed for quite a number of years. I worked with our city staff, Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District, that's a mouthful, water quality vendors and residents to find the best solutions. We were successful in improving the water quality so that it is once again swimmable and is open for all of our Eden Prairie residents. We've also recently improved the adjacent park there and made it just a wonderful facility. I am honored and enthusiastic to run for mayor to provide the vision and set the agenda to keep improving our great city while controlling spending and taxes. My collaborative, responsive, and pragmatic leadership style lead us to help implement and innovate solutions using technology to lower our service delivery costs while improving the speed, quality, and accessibility of those services. Transportation is a critical component of quality of life and is crucial to job growth, and I will continue my work to improve our transportation systems. As Tom mentioned, I am chair of the 494 Corridor Commission, which is a 5-city commission, chair of the Southwest Transit Board, our award-winning bus service, and also chair of the Flying Cloud Airport Zoning Board, to provide the best multimodal transportation for our residents and businesses. Recently, I was very honored to be voted the best of the best city council member in the entire Southwest metro area. I listen to all residents and business owners, respect all people, research issues carefully, work hard, and have a collaborative leadership style that brings everyone to the table to work toward pragmatic solutions. As mayor, I will stay focused on the important core services that we provide: public safety through our exceptional police and fire professionals, and infrastructure, roads, trails, water, sewer, parks, and other amenities. And I will never use the office of mayor to grandstand for political purposes or as a platform for other political ambitions. I won't distract our staff or residents on issues that are governed by state or federal law. I believe that we can keep Eden Prairie a top city through continued smart planning and by providing high-quality city services at the level our residents and businesses expect while controlling costs. We need to continue to encourage thoughtful development with a diverse mix of housing and provide a welcoming and healthy business climate that encourages good job growth. It is my top priority to do this in a fiscally responsible manner. I love Eden Prairie and its residents and businesses, and I am passionate about keeping it a #1 city. I ask for your continued support and for your vote for mayor to continue the work that is so important to us all.
Thank you. Mr. Case.
Thank you, Tom. I can't believe how many people are here tonight. Brad and I were at the League of Minnesota League of Women Voters, something like that, right? Debate. And we had about 25 people, which was great, but this is amazing. So thank you for taking time to come. Really appreciate Pat and Steve Shuey, and then of course Tom for moderating tonight. And I want to give a call out to Brad as well. It's hard being up here. It's hard to run. And even though we see at the national and state level politicians, candidates getting really beat up, believe it or not, that happens sometimes at a local level too. If you go knock on doors and you happen to say the wrong thing, or you're asked about what political party are you, or something that doesn't directly necessarily impact Eden Prairie, and you still get a little bit metaphorically beat up. So I appreciate very much that Brad is willing to run and willing to put himself out there, and also the 4 council members that are running for 2 spots. I deeply appreciate them running as well. Brad and I share 12 years on the city council, 12 of his 14, 12 of my 22. Of those 12 years, we voted for the tax levy identically, I believe, for all 12, unless you're pretty sure on that. I don't recall a development project that we didn't vote similarly on. In essence, we share the same record. We share the great legacy of Eden Prairie. We're really a phenomenally great city. I know you all know that because you chose to live here and you're staying here. Yay, I mean, we have a wonderful place to live. And I don't think our council alone can take credit for that. We have great staff. We have great people that elect the staff, that elect the council that chooses the staff. But nonetheless, the council for all these years have been part of those decisions. And I feel proud to have been part of that as well. The good news is that Eden Prairie doesn't really have many of the challenges that so many other communities across our nation have today. Yes, we have aging infrastructure. We have our demographic changes that need our attention. We have redevelopment pressures. We have affordable housing needs. But Eden Prairie really basically is in great shape going forward. I'm a granddad, and I'm a dad of 4 adult children, and my wife Kathy's sitting there, and they are the love of our lives. I fear for their future, not because of living in Eden Prairie. We have a great place to live here. I fear for their future because the world is not such a great place right now. And our nation, turn the TV on, right? Our nation, I think, is in more trouble. I taught history for 33 years. I think we're in more trouble than at any time since the Civil War, and maybe that's arguable, but we're having issues that go well beyond our city. And I believe as mayor and as a council and as people here in Eden Prairie, we need to be part of conversations. And we need to be part of solutionizing on issues that yes, are internal to us, but also that have an external impact. I'm going to run the risk here of using hyperbole and superlatives too much, I know that, but I really truly believe that the greatest threat facing humanity today is global climate change. And just out of President Trump's own administration, a report came out this weekend that said by 2100 that the Earth will warm 7 degrees, causing catastrophic crises across the Earth. I think every single community on Earth, every community has to be doing something, has to be doing its part to combat global climate change to the extent that we can. I think the biggest threat to my children and my grandchildren's health and welfare are guns. And I think gun violence prevention is a conversation that every community, we may not have the municipal power to do very much for it at all, except to zone where gun stores go. But we can be part of convening conversations. And finally, I think the greatest economic opportunity, probably falling into the hands of Eden Prairie in all the years I've ever lived here, is LRT. Transit-oriented stations will bring millions of dollars of economic development into our community. It's precisely why the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce has voted approval of it, as well as the State Chamber of Commerce. So where there's light between Brad and me on all these issues I just mentioned is the vision that we have for solutionizing and going forward. And again, I believe that 99.9% of everything you'll hear tonight between Brad and me is identical. Potholes, parks, police, we've voted the same on all of it. But where we differ is the vision to protect our world, our country, and our city from forces that can have a great impact on our children's future. We can't just be an island benefiting from our good fortune. Whether it's getting involved in T21 conversations, we can talk more about that later, or bans on plastic that maybe need to be statewide, we need to lobby the legislature, or gun violence prevention measures, or taking our city off the grid by 2050 and plotting that out now. We have a responsibility to not just ride the good time wave, but lead for the sake of the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight, terrific opening statements. If you can keep your answers brief, we'll cover all of the questions that the audience have put up. Mr. Case, we're going to stay with you. So both of you touched on the future of Eden Prairie, and it's a bright future. It's expected to grow at population about 1/3 as much as its current population by 2040, but along with that brings a lot of challenges, many of which the two of you touched on. Infrastructure, how do you guide development, housing, environmental protection. So let me start with transportation. With another 20,000 people potentially moving into Eden Prairie, what are your priorities in managing traffic? The roadways, rapid bus, Southwest Light Rail, and as one of the audience members mentioned, Eden Prairie might be a little bit behind some other communities in bike lanes for commuting. Good job in recreational bike lanes, but commuting bike lanes. What are the priorities? How do you balance them? And how do you get all of that done? We'll start with Mr. Case.
Sure, thank you. When I taught 6th grade for 33 years, I used to do a creative writing exercise where kids would have to think about waking up 100 years ago in Eden Prairie, what was it like? And then I had them write that one for a week, and then we wrote about 100 years from now. And the technology advances we couldn't even begin to guess. Well, I feel like that right now, that when we're thinking about 20 years from now, you can read some of the predictions, but I believe that in the next 20 years, technology will likely be 10 times more than in my entire lifetime. Just think about that for a little bit. What does that even mean, right? And so it probably means roadways that have cars that are completely autonomously driven, right? Artificial intelligence. Buses that have there are buses right now in the United States of America that drive without people, right? That's coming. So my vision for 20 years from now is not only Eden Prairie with 20,000 more people, but the Twin Cities with 1 million more people. So as we think about roadways and bus lanes and LRT, what do we have to do in terms of prioritizing? Do it all. We have to do it all. I mean, here in Eden Prairie, our highway system needs to be upgraded, absolutely. Even with autonomous driven vehicles, we absolutely need more roadway lanes. We don't even have a good exit off of 494 going west to our mall. We were promised that 35 years ago. That's never happened. So there are roadway problem systems we need to correct. We have a great Southwest Transit bus system that Brad and I serve on, and I got the pleasure of voting for him to be chair this last meeting this week. And it's a great organization. But down the road, likely most of it may be intra-Eden Prairie connectivity. I don't know. I know that a Twin Cities in 2050 will need a mass transit LRT system that's spoken radio, maybe with 6 or 7 different spokes going out. We've got to have one of those in Eden Prairie. And with that comes tremendous economic growth and positivity for Eden Prairie. So my answer to bike lanes, and I mean, we basically have to have it all.
Okay.
You're
so let me
right.
Mr. Aho, as you think about the growth over the next 20 years, another 20,000 people, how do you balance all these competing needs in transportation and moving people within Eden Prairie and from Eden Prairie to other communities for jobs and entertainment?
Well, it's a great question because it is a huge challenge, and I think Ron is right that we don't understand what the technology is going to do for our transportation system. I don't think we can envision all the different types of transportation that are out there. I just saw this week that a company has introduced a flying car. We've heard about flying cars for many decades, but it's never been reality. But there's actually a company that's going to be selling them like in a month, and they look pretty darn practical. So, you know, with autonomous vehicles, with all the different technology that's coming out, I've also seen some really unique technology where they can use the current roadways, but the actual people ride in large pods, and those pods can raise and lower and go over traffic that's standing still. I thought that was a fantastic idea. So I don't think we really understand what's going to happen with our transportation system. That's one of the reasons that I'm very concerned about Southwest LRT. I think LRT is another mode of transportation. I think it's great to have multimodal transportation. However, I'm very concerned about spending $2 billion, over $2 billion, in initial capital investment on Southwest LRT in a 100-plus-year-old technology with a fixed line. That line goes from Eden Prairie to downtown Minneapolis. It'll make 15 to 17 stops, take 45 to 55 minutes, whereas our bus service, Southwest Transit, we can get downtown in 18 to 22 minutes, no stops, coach bus, Wi-Fi, very comfortable. You have multiple stops to get off when you get downtown. We're very flexible. If we need to add capacity, guess what? We add a couple of buses and a few drivers. So if we need to change the route, we can change the route. So I think, you know, we have to be very flexible with our transportation. In terms of bike lanes, I think bike lanes are good, but I think that we have to be careful. I know in some surrounding communities that have embraced bike lanes, some of those have added a lot to the congestion of the vehicles, and I think we have to be very careful about adding bike lanes. I think we have a great bike system in Eden Prairie, and I think that's good, but I think we have to be really careful about overbuilding that system. But anyway, I think our roads also need additional capacity, and as chair of the 494 Corridor Commission, we've been very successful. We were successful in helping to get 494-169 interchange built and done. This year, we've got MnDOT to agree to do the first phase of 494-35W. That's an interchange that was designed the year I was born in 1959. And it was designed for 200,000 vehicles maximum capacity. Right now it sees upwards of 400,000 vehicles a day. So it's very under-designed for what we see. It's the worst interchange in the state of Minnesota. But anyway.
So let me ask you to leave it there.
Okay.
And two quick follow-up for both of you. And I want to be clear. So as Southwest Light Rail is currently proposed, about $2 billion, the route that is being offered, you would oppose that?
I do oppose the route, yes.
Okay.
100% supported.
Okay. And then secondly, and Mr. Aho, you touched on this, the Center of American Experiment and other groups have argued that we ought to just build more lanes, more roadways, maybe some more rapid bus transit, certainly no more fixed rail, certainly no more bus lanes, more roads. Let me go back to Mr. Case. Is that an approach you would support?
Kind of gets back to my do-it-all. So caveated, yes, right? But we can't afford to do it all. We subsidize everything, right? We subsidize buses, trains, roads, whatever. So do we need to constantly be improving our road system? Absolutely. Even in an AI world where all the cars are automated, they're still going to be on the road. So I would say qualified yes.
Okay. Mr. Aho, more lanes is a primary solution?
I think that's one of the primary solutions. I don't think it's the only solution. No, I think we need multimodal transportation. It's clear. I mean, we can't build our way completely out of congestion by building roads and bridges.
All right. And as part of looking to Eden Prairie's future, we had a couple of questions from the audience, and both of you touched on this. Housing, I mean, a huge challenge for young families, for working families, to afford housing in Eden Prairie. Are there things that we can do in Eden Prairie, the city can do, to promote a wider array of housing options for existing and new citizens? And start with you, Mr. Aho.
Yes, there is, and I think we do that, Tom. I think we do that through the new development process. When developers come to the city and they want to build in Eden Prairie, we encourage them to build a certain percentages of those properties with affordable housing components built into them. And I think it's good not to be 100% affordable, but have a mix, because I think it really is a good way to balance that. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, the property values in Eden Prairie are very high, and that's one of the things as a council member I feel is extremely important to me, is to maintain the high demand for Eden Prairie properties, because what that does is that protects people's largest investment in their lifetime is their house. And so if you can protect that property value, you are helping them financially for their entire life. And so because the property values are high, though, it makes it very challenging to provide affordable housing. So we are doing that, though, and we're doing whatever we can, but as you know, there's not much property left to develop in Eden Prairie.
Right. Mr. Case?
Yeah, this is probably one of the most complicated issues facing Eden Prairie today, and one of the toughest for us to really solutionize, and yet it's going to fall right into our lap majorly in the next 5-10 years. But we're not alone. I mean, it's across the region. I read that the metropolitan 7-county metro area will be 80,000 affordable housing units short. And I believe I saw that as 2030. It could be prior to that, but we're part of that. And they're trying to, Metropolitan Council is trying to help communities know what their goals are and assign us numbers, and they're way really out of reach with a community like we are already developed. That being said, as Brad said, there's a couple ways to do affordable housing. You can structurally build it into the project, and we're trying to do that. In fact, we have a couple projects coming online that are really, really exciting, that are going to potentially bring 160 to 170 affordable units. And just keep in mind, for everyone listening, and however this gets in the newspaper, I know that sometimes affordable housing gets pejorative, and we think something that it's not. In order to buy an affordable, or to afford even rent at an affordable unit at a 50 percentile or 50% rate of the metropolitan average income level, you'd have to make about $40,000 to $50,000 a year. So we're talking teachers that have been teaching for 8 years, police officers, people that work in our community. They can't live here. And so we need to badly work at trying to get more affordable housing here. One way might be to somehow build in subsidies into the people that are looking for the housing. Like when we subsidize food issues in this country, we don't subsidize the grocery store. We subsidize the people buying the food. So there might be some creative ways out there that as a council we can address this issue.
All right. So let's shift to environmental protection. And we're in a city where the current mayor has set a pretty high bar for environmental leadership in the community, in the region, and even statewide. Mr. Case, are there components of the current environmental agenda, water quality, and other measures that you think are particularly important, maybe to even invest more in? And are there environmental issues that you think ought to be changed?
So the mayor, Nancy Terlukens, and I have served 18 years together, 18 of her 20 and 18 of my 22. Therefore, in many ways, I feel we share the same legacy, and she probably has voted the most similarly to me of anyone on the council, and I have deep respect for her. And so I do feel that in many ways her legacy, I at least feel I can take part in that. I did happen to call her this morning. She's down in Chicago, and I asked her, what do you think your legacy is? Or what do you want your legacy to be? And she was flattered by the way the question got in here. But she did say that going forward, she wants her legacy to be that the things that we do environmentally have wings on them. They go beyond this city. That they impact global climate change. She signed on to the Mayor's Paris Accord, as you know, one of the 350 mayors across the country. Even our bee pollinator program, that isn't just for Eden Prairie, it's for the concept of saving bees across the United States of America that can pollinate all of our apple trees and our vegetables. I mean, to have policies and programs that go beyond our city. So what I would do absolutely is continue on Sustainable Eden Prairie, which, as many of you know, is a program we adopted after 2014-15. It deals with energy, landscape, waste, and water. It has goals of getting 75% of our residents involved in some kind of environmental conservation program by 2025 and 50% of our businesses. I'd like to see us be more aggressive. I mean, I would like to truly look at the possibility of taking Eden Prairie off the grid by 2040, 2050. By the way, our city itself, the energy that our city uses, this building and our 18 other buildings, we will be off the grid technically, and I'll explain that by next fall. So we're building solar panels on all of our flat rooftops across the city, and we're going to exchange that power for solar gardens out across the western area of Minnesota. And we're literally going to have 100% of our power used by city buildings, the alternative energy, renewable energy solar, which is incredible. And I think we can, yeah, that's amazing. And I think we can incentivize our people. I think through, if we set a goal, I just heard that Birmingham, Vermont, I think is off the grid. Now, I don't know if that's just their municipal buildings or if it's their entire city, but I think if we set a goal and set it out, I'll be dead. I won't know if we achieve it, but 2040 or 2050, well, maybe I'll be alive. 12, whatever. The point is, set a goal out there and make substantive steps year by year by year to achieve that. I believe we can do that. I'll stop. I see you're looking at me. So give me the hand.
See, they've got it down.
But yeah, when I see it out of the corner of my eye, I'm looking forward. I get it.
Thank you. Mr. Aho, what portions of the mayor's environmental agenda would you keep? Are there components that you would change?
Well, I think we've had a great legacy with the city of Eden Prairie in terms of energy conservation and just conservation and protection of our environment, and that's important to me. We've achieved the highest level in our Green Steps Cities program, and we just received that award. And I think was that the last council meeting that we had? I think it was the last council meeting we had. We just achieved the highest level of Green Step Cities. And so I think, being an example both for our residents and for our businesses and for the state and nationally is important. I think we've done a great job with prior to Sustainable Eden Prairie, we had our 2040-15 program, which really was the goal to reduce our energy usage by our buildings and all of our city infrastructure by 20%, and to reduce our fuel use in our fleet vehicles by 40%, by the year 2015. Not only did we achieve those results, we exceeded those results. And just in our energy usage alone, we reduced our energy usage by $267,500 annually. So not only is it a good thing as an example, but we are saving money. And by doing that, it really allows some of this. Ron mentioned the solar, building out of solar on all of our city facilities. That is not undertaken by the city as a cost to the city and to our residents, where we're adding taxes to our residents. That is being built out by a third party. We have no responsibility for the cost of that build out, nor for the maintenance of it, but yet we can use that to reduce our energy costs. So by reducing the energy usage of our buildings, by improving our fleet vehicle mileage rates, we're able to really save the city a lot of money and provide a great results. So I'm very proud of that. I think in terms of keeping things, I think we need to continue with the education program that we've been doing. I think we can probably even add to that, to the education. It's always hard to reach people on these things, but I think we need to continue to do that. And our water usage is critical. I think one of the things I would also add is I think we need to do more work in improving the water quality. We've done some of that, but I think we need to really focus on that as well.
So let me follow up on that. You had talked about keeping the lake swimmable and water conservation and quality is one of the 4 pillars of Sustainable Eden Prairie. Not only in Eden Prairie, but throughout the region, a lot of water quality problems in Minnesota come from runoff, from lawns, from gardens, the fertilizer. We live in Minnesota. A lot of the problems are created by the salt runoff. As one of our audience members mentioned, some of the water quality issues have to do with geese, and we'll just leave it at that. But as Eden Prairie has gained national notoriety as a beach town, what are some of the things the city can do specifically to enhance water quality, to keep the lakes swimmable, and to conserve water?
You want me to go first?
Start,
Okay.
please.
So I think some of the things that we can do is we've been working with our watershed districts, but I think we need to be even more engaged with our watershed districts, because some of the things that we did to improve the water quality at Round Lake, for example, a lot of the problems at Round Lake were caused by, like you mentioned, fertilizer runoff going into the lake, causing algae blooms and other things. The other part of the problem that we found out is that invasive species like carp really cause a lot of problems because they stir up the bottom and then they make the water very turbid and they really decrease the water quality. So I think we need to work more closely with the watershed districts to reduce the population of carp in our water bodies. But I think we also need to work by controlling the water that gets into the lakes and rivers. we've done some of that, and the watersheds have been working on that, but I think there's continued work that needs to be done, and that really has a big positive impact. So in other words, all the water that's running off, instead of running directly into the rivers or into the lakes, we have different NERP ponds and different holding ponds, and then there's different ways to treat that water in those ponds by putting different types of products in there, by aerating it. There's a number of technologies that can be used, and so I think we need to continue to do that and improve that, because I'm a huge advocate for making our lakes more swimmable, keeping them just better environmentally for our residents to use and enjoy.
Thank you. Mr. Case, specific actions to improve water quality, promote conservation?
Yes, thank you. I was chatting the other day with Leslie Stovering, who is our water quality expert for the city, and running the fertilizer question by her, because it's really controlled by state statute, and the state statute that was passed in 2002 and rolled out over the next 2 to 3 years actually preempts cities from doing anything more. I mean, we can't even by law. It gets back to this idea of we need to go outside our borders, and we need to lobby the legislature, and we need to lobby Congress for things that have positive impact on us here in Eden Prairie, but I digress. So the idea that we can't even control phosphorus more than what the state statute says, frustrating phosphorus is one of the major ingredients, as Brad talked about, the turbidity, I love that word, of the water. What does that mean exactly? Is it messiness or dirtiness, or you can't see through it or something? Whatever.
Basically that there's particulate in the water.
I would have gone there, but yeah. But it's a cool word. At any rate, and so what we can do, I think, as a city is to model for our residents a lot of behaviors. If you're driving down Pioneer Trail by the Cummins Grow House, the historic Cummins Grow House that the Historical Society, of which my wife is president, actually controls that house, and you can rent it. Talk to her later. But as you drive by there, the prairie grasses are beautiful. Why don't we do that everywhere? It's in our name, Eden Prairie, right? And so if we could take more Kentucky bluegrass out of circulation and replace it with prairie grass, we wouldn't have to mow it, we wouldn't have to water it, we wouldn't have to fertilize it, and it would look beautiful. So we've got to model that, and I think more and more people, we need to incentivize and encourage people to take some of their lawns out of Kentucky bluegrass. I know that's going to be a culture change, right? Because we move into a city to get onto a cul-de-sac to have Kentucky bluegrass. But I think as we age in place, many of us maybe don't want to mow as much. So we need to figure out ways to help incentivize that. So here's some things we could also do. We could help to retrofit the use of rainwater gardens more and more, because Brad is right, the NERP ponds, but they're usually built into suburbs, and it's really hard to get a huge NERP pond built after the fact, but we can do rainwater gardens. Do you know that with the salt usage, Eden Prairie, the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District did a study and found of all the cities that border the 9 Mile Creek, Eden Prairie had the lowest use of municipal salt in any other city. So we are doing really well. But do you know where, and Chamber of Commerce, perk up here, I'm not bashing on you, but just listen. The #1 misuser of salt on parking lots are businesses. So we need to educate. And of course, they're also concerned about lawsuits. So then we need to go back to the legislature, go outside of our city, and we need to lobby for some kind of tort reform that would protect and cover businesses so they can use less salt and not have to get to blacktop. So at any rate, there are lots of things that I think we can do. I think we have to start them one at a time, but we have to model this and start this as a city.
If I can just make one quick comment, that's a really good point Ron brought up. The city is modeling that, because many of our parks, we've taken part of the parks and converted them into prairie grass and prairie initial vegetation states. And so we've done that as a model and a way to conserve the amount of energy that we use to mow it and to water it and to fertilize it. And so I think the city is doing a great job at that. So thanks for bringing that up.
And I think we're modeling taking turbidity out of our lakes too.
I just want to point out, though, that
You all are never going to forget that word, by the way.
both of them avoided the politically contentious issue of goose poop.
I'll tell you this, as my father-in-law always said, it's not the species, it's the feces.
Well said, well said.
So my wife sitting there, once she learned that they marry for life, the goose conversation's over at my household. They marry for life. You're going to kill a husband or a wife if you take one off.
I'm okay with that. All right, I want to make sure we save time for some questions about the business climate, but just very quickly, and Mr. Case, we'll start with you. You know, both of you talked about the importance of engaging residents in meeting the environmental goals, particularly recycling, waste reduction, the ambitious organics collection goals that Eden Prairie has set. So how does the city, how does a mayor engage citizens in really acting on some of these priorities? Mr. Case?
So you're talking about particularly...
Well, in becoming more environmentally aware, in promoting more recycling, waste reduction, organics collection.
So we're going to have to engage all of you, engage the public really quickly on organics recycling because it's mandatory. By 2020, all businesses have to recycle their organics. And by 2022, across the state of Minnesota, all residents, all citizens, all people living anywhere in the state of Minnesota will have to recycle their organics. So the number one thing you might be thinking right now is you might be thinking you know what organics are, but it's not the same as composting. And so we need to educate. Like meat is in organics, but meat is not in composting. So I mean, there's just a whole lot of getting information out. We have to get to our haulers. We have to redo and revise our code because we're going to have to mandate now that our haulers pick up organics. So there's just some work that can be done, but again, I mean, I can't say it enough. It's kind of like the old thing of you communicate with the public and then you communicate again, and then you communicate again and again, and it's our responsibility to keep communicating. It's going to be the same thing with educating. We're going to have to educate, and keep bringing this to the forefront.
I would agree. I think education is key, but I think we can also challenge the public and give them goals to meet. In terms of countywide goals, here are some of the goals that are set out. So landfilling, positive progress is 12% reduction by 2016, but the goal is another by 2030 to reduce that down to 1%. Waste to energy, positive progress, 6% increase in waste to energy. And the goal is by 2030 to have that at 19%. Recycling, again, we've had positive progress, 6% increase up to 2016, but the goal by 2030 is to have 60% of items recycled, and organics 15% by 2030. So we as a city are doing that already. I've had a lot of people talk to me about organic recycling when I've been out on the campaign trail door knocking. People have said, you know, when are we going to start to do that? And I think the waste haulers are, as Ron mentioned, are starting to get geared up for that, and I think we'll see it very soon.
All right, so let's shift to some business issues. We live in Minnesota, along with road salt. We have a lot of regulations, and we have taxes, and businesses always have concerns with the cost of doing business in Minnesota. So if you're mayor, Mr. Aho, when you look at the future of business in Eden Prairie, when you look at the importance of the mall and the change that is occurring in retail, in bricks and mortar retail, what are your priorities? How do you assure the business community that under an Aho administration, Eden Prairie is still going to be a great place to start a business, to conduct a business, and to grow and prosper?
Great question. I think we need to be very careful when we introduce regulations, because a lot of times those regulations have unintended consequences. And I think, you know, we looked at some people have ideas about different regulations that might help, like raising minimum wage and things like that. But I think a lot of those ideas have really unintended consequences, and they hurt businesses. And so I think that we need to be very careful about that. But I think what we also really need to do, whenever I talk to businesses and people in the business community at the chamber or just at meetings and when I meet and talk with people, is that there's a huge need for skilled labor. You talk to any business person and they say right now their number one challenge is finding qualified workforce, people to fill the positions that they have. I think we can do a better job as a city as acting as a catalyst between our education partners and the businesses to fill those positions and to make sure that the education partners, both the public school and the private schools and Hennepin County technical schools, do a better job of matching those jobs up. Because if you look at the job market, half of the jobs that exist today didn't even have a job description 10 years ago. That job description didn't even exist. And so our job market is changing drastically. There's a lot of very technical jobs out there that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree from a college. And I think there's a lot of people that don't understand that. I think we need to do a better job communicating that to people and getting people engaged in gearing up for those jobs. Because they can graduate from maybe a 2-year program, a technical college program, with very little to no debt at all, and get to work with a very good paying job. And I think a lot of those jobs turn out to be entrepreneurial as well. I think the city also can do something to act as a catalyst by providing an entrepreneurial workspace and maybe a maker space. And I've spoken with our staff. Our staff is looking at some property. Right now, we're seeking some input from developers that would come and develop a space like a WeWork or one of those types of spaces with some entrepreneurial startup space for people to do work there. And I think that would not only benefit our residents, but I think it would benefit our businesses. And so I think we really need to focus on that. One last thing, Tom, is that we've done a good job in meeting with our businesses. We have a meet and greet program, but I think we need to expand that. As mayor, what I would do is I would personally go and meet with our largest employers in the city of Eden Prairie on a quarterly basis. I think we need to go to those businesses and say, look, we appreciate that you're employing our residents in Eden Prairie. What can we do to help you? What does your business climate look like? Are you adding employees? Do you have employee needs? Or what are your transportation needs? What's going on in your world? How can we help you? We appreciate you being here. I don't think we've done a good enough job at doing that, and I would change that as mayor.
And what makes the Case administration good for businesses in Eden Prairie?
In case you asked. Well, I agree with very much of what Brad said. I think I would flavor it differently and say I would start with people. It's not that I don't care about businesses, I care a lot about businesses, but if people don't want to move into Eden Prairie, businesses are not going to be successful here. So whatever it takes to get people to continue to value the city, and I believe ideas like transit, especially millennials and Gen Zers today, which I just heard at United Health Group, by 2025, 15% of our workforce at United Health Group, that's only 6 years away, will be Gen Zers. And they are remarkably different than millennials. So if you're a millennial sitting here, you can come up and ask me later. But they're much, much more like baby boomers, but we'll talk about that. But if we can learn ways to attract these younger people and keep them in our city, then businesses will benefit. So one of the number one issues with that generation is transit, light rail. Second, housing, affordable housing. So if we build a community and we build an environment in which businesses can be successful because we attract the people here that will shop at those businesses or will work for those businesses, then our business community will be very successful. And I would, not just to go one step further, it's not that at all, I agree completely with Brad about going out to the businesses, but ever since I've been on the council, at different times as different councils, I've been able to kind of convince to go do this. We do off-site council meetings, and we take a council meeting out to the senior center, or we take a council meeting out to a diverse community, one of the apartment buildings. Well, I would take council meetings and workshops out to some of our major businesses and actually run our council meeting there, but have it be available so that take an hour off the, not just because it's my company, go to Optum or go to Sage Robinson or go to Starkey, but have people have an hour off to come and visit with the council. I think the idea and cross-pollination, the idea flow could be incredible. So I think, again, it starts and ends with people, and that will make the businesses in our community the most successful.
So from both of you, a lot of good ideas, but what I didn't hear is any proposal to cut taxes, to reduce regulations. So let me ask you directly, and I'll start with Mr. Case. Do you think that the current climate of regulations and taxes that the city can control is conducive to a good business climate?
So I do. We have some of the lowest taxes in the 7-county metro area for both residents and businesses. And we hear that back from businesses. Secondly, when it comes to regulations, most of the regulations that we hear businesses having issues with are charter city regulations. So we're a statutory city, which means we're governed by a constitution that came out of the legislature back in 1858 on May 11th, when we became a state and became a city. And so we are not statutorily permitted to have any rights really to govern anything at all about minimum wage or benefits. We can't even do that. We can't pass that kind of a regulation. Occasionally we'll have the power to do things. I'll give an example. Back in 2002 when we studied passing a smoking ban in our restaurants prior to the state of Minnesota having passed it. And we looked at that, and one of the major criteria was we did not want to make our businesses have a less favorable competitive environment than this identical business in our contiguous neighboring cities. So we did not pass that particular ban. We did ban it in our parks and open spaces, and then 2 years later the state passed a statewide ban. So I think that's the key there, that if we do have powers to enact some kind of regulation on top of a business, make sure that it doesn't impair or give a competitive disadvantage. And or if we really still believe in that, then it gets back to go outside our city. We lobby the legislature to get the laws passed that we feel will be best for the people of Eden Prairie.
And Mr. Aho, is the current climate tax regulation conducive to doing business in Eden Prairie?
Well, we have over 3,400 businesses located in Eden Prairie today. So we have a large number of businesses, and we have a lot of large businesses in Eden Prairie. Like Ron mentioned, we have C.H. Robinson, Starkey, Super Value, United Health Group, Emerson, Eden, MTS Systems, Climatech, Stratasys. I think the climate is good because I think we have great residents. Our residents in Eden Prairie have a lot of skills. We have very qualified people, very skilled people. I think that really is attractive to businesses. I think our tax climate is good, but I do think that we have to really be careful and watch our taxation. I know before I was on the council, our taxes were going up at a rate of over 7% a year. And at 7% a year, in 10 years, you double your budget, you double your taxes. And so working together with the council, we were able to reduce that. I think it's been very moderate in the last 10 years since I've been on the council. And I think we're doing a great job at keeping it. And Ron's very right. We're in the lower quartile of our neighbors. And so I think tax-wise, we're doing well. I think regulations, we just have to be very careful about enacting new regulations because they can have very detrimental impacts on businesses. But we don't have a lot of authority to enact new regulations.
So one last question, then we'll turn it over to you for your closing statements. Mr. Aho, both of you have talked about, and many members of the audience have asked about, how does Eden Prairie build and maintain good working relationships with watershed districts, with the county, with the state, with the Metropolitan Council, with the federal government, for that matter. So let me ask you specifically, because it's so much in the news, as you look at the Metropolitan Council, is it a friend or foe of Eden Prairie? Do you keep it the way it is, or would you drive for changes that you think could benefit the Eden Prairie?
Well, I think in certain regards it's a friend, and in certain regards I would say it's a foe. Here's kind of my thoughts on the Metropolitan Council. I think the Metropolitan Council was formed with very good intentions. It was formed as basically the Metropolitan Sewer Commission. I think that's what it should go back to, as being the Metropolitan Sewer Commission, because that's a very needed, necessary function that we need to provide. But they have kind of grown and grown and grown and grown. And now we have to submit all of our guide plans through the Metropolitan Council and have them approve it. So here we have an unelected body of people that are telling the city of Eden Prairie what our population goals should be, what our guide plan and what our zoning should look like, what our transportation plans should be. They're telling us everything. I think we as elected officials have a very good pulse on what's going on in Eden Prairie and what our people expect and what they want. And I don't really...
Amen.
And I do not like the Metropolitan Council telling us what things should be. And so I think the Metropolitan Council needs reform. I think it needs to be scaled back. I don't think it should be completely disbanded, but I think it needs to be scaled back in its responsibilities. And I think we need to get representation on the Met Council that is elected people, because then you have skin in the game, and people have some authority to go back to those people and say, you know, what is your decision-making process and what are you driving? And so I think those changes are very necessary, and I think the legislature has been working towards that. It's kind of been a gradual process, and I do support that. Those changes.
Mr. Case?
People always want and assume that more democracy is better. I'm going to be very, very careful what I'm saying here. And I think in some cases it can actually be detrimental. Like, let's say we were to go to wards in the city of Eden Prairie, which might be a good idea, and many of you might like that. But suddenly a council member from southwest Eden Prairie maybe doesn't want to vote for funding for a park that's going up in northeast Eden Prairie. They no longer have that global all Eden Prairie viewpoint anymore. There's maybe more representation, more democracy, because they're closer to the people that live in that small ward. But there might be worse decisions coming out of it. I'm not saying the Metropolitan Council is a perfect organization, and I'm not sure I disagree with Brad. I really have. I've given it some thought. I don't know if we should have some elected officials on it, but I just know that if you leave like a watershed district up to each city along a creek's or river's path to make its own determination for the creek just in the 6 miles it ran through that city, you'll have all kinds of ordinances that are haphazard and scattered, and you will not protect that creek or the watershed around it. And the Metropolitan Council was formed to try to help 20, 30 different communities basically make some Twin Cities-wide decisions that made sense for the Twin Cities, not just Edina, not just Richfield, not just Woodbury, but for the Twin Cities. And it almost needed to be removed a little bit from politics. We have this love-hate thing going on in America with politics. We love it, we hate it. Many people, anyone that clap there to get rid of the Metropolitan Council or make it elected, you're saying you love the politics, you want to make it more political. That's interesting today, right, in our political environment. I'm not saying I disagree with that. I just know that this is a very complicated decision. The Metropolitan Council has been doing a basically good job in trying to stay as objective as it can. And it is accountable, not as much as elected officials the governor appoints, but the legislature funds. And whoever pulls the money strings has tremendous control. So don't ever believe that the Metropolitan Council has no accountability to it. It absolutely does. So I would say that for now I would leave it alone, and I would absolutely, if the legislature wants to get involved, then form a committee and study it like they've been doing for 30 years and they've not been able to come up with a better solution. So much for politics in that one, but let them try at it again, and maybe there is a better idea out there. I know that across the nation, the model that we're operating under has worked well. So there are other models out there in the United States of America, though. I'm done, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Case. And thank you for both of you very thoughtful answers throughout tonight. So we're going to invite each of the candidates to give a closing statement on the theme of how mayors have to steward the resources that are provided by taxpayers. We all must be stewards of the environment. So how will you, as mayor, lead Eden Prairie on these priorities, balancing the amenities that Eden Prairie residents value, environmental protection, the services they want, with the need to pay for them through taxes? Mr. Case?
Well, thank you, Tom, for being here this evening, and thank you to the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce and also Conservation Minnesota. So Eden Prairie has a legacy of 9 mayors since our birth in 1963. 1858 we just became a township. In 1963 we became a city. So we've been under 9 mayors and 55 years of city councils. And we have this legacy of being strong stewards of our financial resources and for sure our incredible environmental assets. I'm guessing if you don't agree with what I just said, you wouldn't have moved here, and you certainly wouldn't have stayed here. So we have an incredible financial picture going on with our AAA bond rating and our high resident survey marks on how we spend their tax dollars. People are happy, generally, at least they're letting us know that, with how we are stewarding their money. We have some of the lowest taxes in the 7-county metro area. We just have this amazing, not only reputation within Eden Prairie, but we're the envy of many other cities. I know when Rick Getcho, our city manager, attends city manager meetings, Eden Prairie is the place that people would like to work. Environmentally, we've set aside more land than open space than any of our contiguous neighboring cities. We're one of the only cities around that treat our Prairie du Chien well water to purer than most bottled water. Honest to goodness, we could bottle it, and it would pass tests higher than the bottled water that you're buying. We have amazing resources in Eden Prairie that we have been good stewards of. Our taxes are low, our quality of life is high, but we are not an island. We don't succeed if Minnesota fails. We don't succeed if America fails. We don't succeed if our earth fails. We must do our municipal part in combating global climate change and leading conversations on gun violence prevention and lobbying for LRT to come into our city, in promoting inclusiveness, promoting community, and promoting relationships. I promise to be the mayor that will bring people together, that will unite, and who will make our city an even better place to live, while at the same time working to improve our state, our country, and our world. I do thank the Chamber and Conservation Minnesota. I love the idea of green and green. I think that was novel, and I appreciate you bringing this event together. And I really seriously thank Brad Aho. We've had 12 years. We're friends. We go on National League of City conventions with our spouses. We enjoy each other, and I look forward to the years to come with Brad. So take care of everyone. I really appreciate you being here. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Case.
Well, thanks again to the Chamber and the Conservation of Minnesota for hosting this event. And Tom, you did a great job moderating. I appreciate all your work tonight. And also, I'd like to thank all of the businesses in Eden Prairie, because the businesses in Eden Prairie keep our city vibrant. They provide great jobs for our residents, and they provide property tax relief for all of our residents to keep our taxes low. And I also thank all of our residents, because I've been to many cities, and I think the residents of Eden Prairie are some of the best in the state and the nation, and I wouldn't go anywhere else because I think they're great. I'm really honored and enthusiastic to run for mayor, to set the agenda and keep the vision to improving our great city while controlling spending and taxes. But I think we do need to balance that with environmental impacts, and I think we are doing a good job at that, and I would continue that as mayor. And I would just like to use my collaborative leadership style to help us to implement innovative solutions that can do financially well, but also environmentally well. I will stay focused on the important core services that we provide: public safety, infrastructure, parks, and other amenities, without political distractions. I think that's what the people of Eden Prairie demand. I think that's what they expect, and I think that's why they vote us into office. And I am very honored to be voted one of the best city council member in the Southwest Metro area. And I want to thank all of you for encouraging me to run for mayor when our current mayor, Nancy Tyler-Lukens, decided to retire. Working together, we can keep Eden Prairie a #1 city and a destination for our businesses and our residents. And I just ask for your continued support and for your vote for mayor. And please feel free to contact me at bradaho@bradaho.com anytime. My phone number is on my website as well. And thank you again to everyone for being here.
Before we say goodnight, I have one quick announcement. The city will be hosting an open house this Saturday, October 6th, from 11 to 2 right here in City Center, at which you can learn from a variety of organizations about ways to save on energy bills, renewable energy subscription programs, electric vehicles, and more. So please make a note, 11 to 2, Saturday, right here at City Center. Let me join in thanking the Chamber of Commerce, Conservation Minnesota, and all of you for taking time. There's nothing more important than to spend time and learn about your candidates. And I want to pay, again, a special thanks to Mr. Case, Mr. Aho. I truly mean this. I think Eden Prairie is very fortunate to have people like these two who are willing to give of their time and their service. It's not easy to run for public office these days. It's even less easy to serve in public office. And that you would have two such thoughtful leaders speaks a lot to them and to the city. So thank you, thank you.
That guy gets elected.